Hi, my name is Eric Swanson. I'm a solution architect for EFI. In this video, I'm going to demonstrate a new exciting feature on the Konica Minolta CurioPress C14000. Now this feature is available for other Konica Minolta printers, but we're going to focus on this one for this video. The feature I'm describing is enabled by a feature called a UK-301 auto inspection unit. What this feature does is basically it scans successive prints for differences compared to a reference image to make sure that all the prints that come out of the printer are exactly what you expect. Let me come close to the camera and help you understand. The way we start this process is we release a job called a proof print from the Fiery printer. This proof print is used by the operator of the printer to basically inspect this print, looking at both surfaces if it's a single page or multiple pages if it's a multi-sheet job. What you're looking for is to make sure that this is exactly how you want the other prints to print out of the printer. So what the UK-301 does is it uses the scanners in the IQ-501 Intelligent Quality Optimizer to ensure that this print looks like all the successive prints in that job. Let me show you some examples of some of the things that are rejected. In this particular example, I drew on the sheet with a red Sharpie. You might be able to see that. In addition, there's a mark on her eye. The scanner picked up on this and it automatically ejected this page to the designated purge tray. In addition, one of the things that it also picked up on is this bar right here below that print. In addition to the model's hair here, this should be a solid black and that should be solid filled. But there was a fusing problem on the printer. This problem was also picked up by the UK-301 and the IQ-501, and this sheet was ejected. Okay. In addition, another very important for you folks, for you printers that print VDP jobs. In this particular example, this is a 4-up postcard. What's extremely important for a job like this, because you're trimming this off of the sheet, is that the alignment of the front surfaces line up with the back surfaces. In this particular case, the print, if I trim on the crop mark, and you can see that I got a little bleed in that trim. If I print on that crop mark the appropriate location for the front surface, if I flip this over, you'll see that the postage stamp was actually clipped by the trim because the backside surface is actually off by over 1/4 of an inch. This would be a significant problem, especially for jobs that might go to a stacker tray where you might be printing 2,000 sheets. You've wasted the paper, you've wasted the clicks. The UK-301 would have picked up on this problem. The final example I'll explain to you is a feature enabled by the UK-301. It allows us to draw exclusion zones because there might be expected differences between different postcards where the address label might be different for this person. There's no photograph in that one, but there is a photograph there, different address label, different phone number. So we draw exclusion zones so that the rest of the page can be inspected except for the content that's within these boxes. You can define up to 3 pages in a job and up to 5 independent unique zones. Now, Konica Minolta just announced 2 new features for the UK-301. One of those features is called a UK-311 acceleration kit. That would allow me to not have to draw this exclusion zones, but actually it will scan every area in this. And what it does is it uses the source data of the file, what we send to the printer, instead of the scanned content of what actually prints through the printer. So it makes it a little faster, but it also can get tighter into the area, so if a dot or a streak or a toner problem happened here, it would pick up on it. In addition, Konica Minolta announced a new feature also for the UK-301 called the UK-312, which is a VDP verification kit. For you printers that actually use sequencing on your postcards, maybe you put an 01 here, or an 02 here, an 03 and 04, the UK-312 would allow you to upload a CSV file to the printer. It can scan an area of the page either through the image or through the data that we send to the printer, and ensure or create a CSV file of what it scans because it does OCR of the content on the page, or it looks at the imagery in the file that we send to the printer to ensure that the data that you sent, 1, 2, 3, 4, matches the sheet content that's output. Now, I know that's a lot for you to understand. There's a lot to cover in this feature. It's actually very easy to use, but I'm going to take you through the hardware components that are necessary for this technology to work. So let's grab the camera. We'll start with the engine here. Well, actually, we'll start with the paper tray. So I'm using a PF707. Inside this tray, what we want to do is actually mark some pages so that, forgive me, we're going to mark some pages so they get rejected. I can't force, per se, a fusing problem or a streak problem. So to basically prove the feature here, I'm marking pages so that they don't match the reference image that we printed. Backing away from the printer, this is the C14000 engine. Under these COVID times, maybe you haven't had a chance to see it. If I open up the front door, you can see the toner bottles in the engine. You've got your paper path here, so the page is going to pull out of tray 2. It'll feed through the printer. The imaging will happen. The belt's going to lay down an image. You got your fusing section here, and the paper will ultimately keep advancing through the printer. The next option that we'll hit is a relay unit in the printer. This is not important for this function, so we're going to move on to where the main magic is happening. This is the IQ-501, this whole unit here. The UK-301 is actually a unit that's mounted on the back of the printer. I'm going to give you a little better glimpse in a second of that unit, but that's the UK-301 mounted on the back. What's important with the IQ-501 for this functionality to work is the scanners that are built into the system. Here is a scanning unit right here. This box you basically see, and here's the scanning unit here. So if you notice this little opening right here, this opening is a scanner that's facing up. It's scanning the back side of the page for alignment and for content against that reference image, a comparison. The second scanner is here, this whole unit right here. This scanner's pointing down. It's scanning the top surface of the paper as that paper's passing through this engine. There is a third scanner built in here. That's the spectrophotometer. It's primarily used for color, for calibration and profiling, not important for this process. Again, the main scanners are built into this unit here. Your optics are here, and you have your scanner here, and the optic is there, okay? So that's scanning the content. When a problem happens, you have a reference image stored in the printer. When a problem happens, that sheet will be automatically rejected. That paper will pass up to the exit tray, and basically it would come out this exit tray, and it would have picked up on the fact that you had some kind of weird mark in this particular sheet, or weird marks on the sheet, and the rejects would go here. Finally, the last part that would happen is if there was not a rejection that occurred, and incidentally, when a rejection occurs, any sheet that's in this paper path of this printer will have to be rejected to the top exit tray. The way this printer is currently configured, that's about 11, if on 1117 sheets, that was about 9 sheets that got ejected to this. After the recovery, assuming no prints have a problem, then that paper will basically pass through the printer to your designated exit tray, whether it's a stacker, whether it's a staple finisher at the end, whether it's a booklet maker, whichever output tray you picked. So that's the end of kind of the hardware review of this feature, other than maybe showing you a better glimpse of the UK-301, which happens to be mounted on the back of my C4080. So what you see right here is that whole unit right there is the UK-301. If you bought the additional the UK-311 or 312, it's my understanding they would actually be mounted somehow in this unit. I don't have those, so I can't explain that. Maybe we can do a future video. For now, I'm going to end this video about the hardware, and we're going to transition now into the software touch points of how you control this feature. Thank you for watching. Hi, it's Eric again. I wanted to do a quick review of what we just covered in the hardware video to demonstrate the new UK-301 auto inspection unit. First, I demonstrated or showed you the Konica Minolta CurioPress C14000 printer. Now, you don't need this whole configuration to be able to do what we did. The primary components that are required are the IQ-501 and the UK-301, but there are some other components that are required as well. Again, the engine itself, the IQ-501, which is the unit here, which has the scanners that are used by the UK-301 to scan the printed sheets as they feed through the printer. The UK-301 was mounted on the back of the IQ-501. The RU-702 is this unit right here. That has the purge tray for the reject pages that are picked up by the UK-301. If they don't match the reference image, they're automatically ejected to here, because I'm going to set a setting and show you where we set that in one of the interfaces. And then the good pages continue to feed through the printer and exit to any one of your standard exit trays. Maybe it's the stacker, maybe it's a booklet maker, or maybe it's the stapler finisher at the end of the line. And then finally we have the Fiery controller, which is where you're going to the tool you're going to use to create the reference image and also to control the job properties for when you use the auto inspection. Again, I mentioned that Konica Minolta has just announced 2 new features for the UK-301. These are options that mount inside the 301. That would be the UK-301 acceleration kit. It uses the source data image instead of actually the scanned image from the IQ-501 to look for anomalies in the print job. And the UK-312 is a VDP verification unit. So it can match against a CSV data set whether or not the printer is actually printing the same CSV, whether it's a barcode or whether it's a serial ID that's printed on each one of the records in the file. Again, I don't have these units in our printer, so we can't really demonstrate that or talk about that, so we're going to move on and talk about what we can demonstrate. So there's basically 5 primary touch points, software or touch panels on the engine itself, on the printer itself, to control these particular features. I'm going to start by showing you the IQ function set. To do that, I'm going to remote into the printer. So I'm using the web utilities on the controller of the printer. We have a network cable running directly into the print engine to allow us to do this. On the touch panel, if you walk up to it, you'd be able to do the same thing, but here I want to touch the IQ function set. When I do that from my remote browser, there are occasions when I have to basically refresh the page so it'll show what I see on the engine against the wall. So I'm going to click Next 2 times to basically get into the primary features that are controlled or that can be set for the auto inspection system. So first, this says automatic reprint when deviation out of range was detected. So when an error page is found by the scanner, this being on will automatically start reprinting the job so that you have the output that you expect instead of stopping it completely. You can designate which output tray to eject the reject pages using this feature here. So here I've set the purge tray of the RU702. Next, there's a create auto inspection feature. Now this is a very slick feature that the Konica Minolta engineers built into this capability. It will actually create PDF files for jobs, for the good pages that are running a job and also for the error pages. And it will also highlight the areas that the IQ-501 and UK-301 scanned and picked up as anomalies compared to the reference images that you store. Again, I'll show that in a minute. Next, the auto inspection level setting. In the Fiery driver itself, you're going to see a setting for Essential, Standard, and Premium. This is where we actually set what it's doing. So if you notice here, ultimately the lower the number, the larger of an area that it will allow through to not to pass without a reject. So with the Premium setting being the smallest possible reference point, that's going to be the most strict, if you will, anomalies that it will pick up. Okay, so but in the Fiery driver, you're not going to see the numbers. You're going to see Essential, Standard, and Premium. This is where you set what those values do. Okay. Finally, there's one last setting here: reference image automatic deletion. So as we store references images in the system, this will choose to either get rid of them or to keep them. And for now, we want to keep them so that we can apply them to a job. Okay. With the IQ function setting set, then we can move on to the next interface. That interface would really be the reference images that are created by proof printing from Command WorkStation. You can store up to 2,000 reference images in the printer. Each reference image can have 3 independent reference pages that you select within a given job. Now that job can be more than 3 pages, but there are 3 pages that we can do some unique things with, and I'll show that in a minute. You can either select the front page, the back page, or a selected page within the job. On each one of those pages, you can set 5 exclusion zones. I'll show one of the reference images as an example so that you understand what I mean by this. Again, let's go back to the engine. Okay, we're going to navigate to a touch panel option called Reference Image Management here on the bottom of the screen. Okay, when we do that, we're able to select the reference images that are stored in the engine. I'm going to use this particular example to explain some of the options that I just talked about. I'm going to choose this button called Inspection Area Set to basically define the individual pages of the job. I'm going to reload it again. I can see the first page of this job. This is a 4-up postcard. In this particular case, on the front page, I'm actually scanning the whole page to make sure that the successive pages or copies of this job look exactly like the sheet here. However, on the second page of this job, or the back page of this job, I've actually created some exclusion zones because we are doing postcards, and I'm going to have individual names and phone numbers here individual address labels here, and in some cases some of the records will have photographs, different photographs. I don't want the UK-301 to recognize this difference in content as an error on the print job. So we're excluding these areas, and again, we can set up to 5 exclusion areas. I have 4 set here, and the way to set them is by entering values here on the screen. Now I can enter the values here, or I can use a wired mouse attached to a USB port behind the touchscreen of the printer to basically draw the zones on this template at the touchscreen of the printer. Now you could use a wireless mouse. I've attempted to do that as well. My experience was the wired mouse worked better. Okay, so again, we can set exclusion zones. Again, I'm going to get out of here, and you have different reference images. In addition, one other thing I'll point out while on the screen is the reference ID. In the Fiery driver, we allow you to select a reference ID. This is the ID we're referring to. You can either select the last proof print or a specific reference ID. So the number would be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Again, you can store up to 2,000 reference images in the printer. Okay, we're going to close that interface, and now I'm going to take you to the Fiery to show you how to, number one, create the reference image, and how to create the how to control the auto inspection system. I've imported a file into the Fiery. I right-click, I choose Property on the job. I scroll down to the Image tab. Let's make sure that everything else is set in this job. So if it's this particular case, I want the first 2 pages of the job. I'm going to define my paper as the 1117 hammer mill paper. I'm going to choose to print duplex, and I want to scale to fit. Next, and now those things aren't important for the auto inspect. I'm just setting this job up to print. I'm going to go to the Image tab, scroll down to the auto inspection to basically trigger the auto inspection. And then if this is the first time that I'm creating the proof image for the reference ID, I want to choose proof print. Again, all I have to do is select auto inspection and then proof print. Okay. Now what that's going to do is it's going to process this file. It's going to print it out. As an operator, you're expected to walk to the printer, pick up that print job, inspect it front to back, or if it's multi-pages, it's the page of the job. Does it look exactly what you want 1,000 copies of that job to look like? If it does, then that's a good reference image. If it does not, you correct your print properties and print it again until you have a good reference image for the scanner to then start scanning your live job. Okay, I'm waiting for that job to basically then get done printing to then control the auto inspection features of the job. It's just about done printing. Okay, you can see that the job is printing here. Okay, it is printed as a proof print. Now, if I want to print 1,000 copies of this job, I'm going to go back into the properties of the job. I'm going to set my quantity, 100, 1,000, whatever that quantity may be. For the sake of saving paper, I'm going to say 10. I'm going to go back to the Image tab. Now what I'm going to do is scroll down to the auto inspection unit. Again, it's still enabled because of the proof print feature. However, you have a choice here. Do I use the last printed proof job, which we just printed? You could choose this, or you could select from reference ID. Again, you would go to the reference image list on the printer to determine which number reference ID you would have to program into this setting. For the sake of this, I'm just going to say use the latest proof job, okay? Because that's the last job that I printed. Now you could say approve a printer control panel. If I choose this option and hit print, the operator will have to release the job before it starts printing. Okay? And then finally, the last feature in the Fiery is delete reference image after printing. So if I don't want that reference image to be left in the queue of reference images, I can choose to delete it after the job gets done printing. And again, here's my control for what setting it uses on the engine to basically scan it. Okay? So these are very simple to use feature on the Fiery. Most of the what's happening is that to control this is actually done on the engine itself. Okay? Now, the last interface that I want to show you is actually the auto inspection report. To do that, I'm going to go to the web utilities for the UK-301. Now, there's a network cable running into the back of the UK-301. I have an independent IP address for that unit to basically plug into here. It'll bring me this page, and I can click on List of Image Inspection Reports. The username for this is web user. The password is 12345678 by default. It could have been changed in your environment. This gives me access to the reports that have been recorded and saved when I've used this feature. So if I click on a successful report, you'll see a link to a file that will open up. It gives me a thumbnail of the report of how many pages were run for this particular job, and then it also has thumbnails of the pages that were printed in this job. That's a good report. Let's go back and look at a bad report. Okay, those will show up in red. And then we can click on the report and it shows that it's sustained. Click on the error report. In this particular example, it gives me, again, a cover page for what happened. I can click on the report and it gives me very specific detail of what the IQ-501 and the UK-301 found on this image. Again, I had taken a Sharpie pen to the white piece of paper that fed through the printer. The UK-301 picked up on that as an anomaly against the reference image, and it provides me additional detail for what it found as an error on this particular print page. Very interesting feature of the UK-301 auto inspection system on the Konica Minolta CurioPress printer. I hope that helps you understand how this feature works. Thank you for watching this video.